It was supposed to be a private conversation, a whisper behind closed doors, a quiet negotiation to make a massive problem disappear. But when Bryan Freedman, one of the most feared and respected attorneys in the industry, received an alleged cash offer from Blake Lively's camp to drop his client Justin Baldoni, things didn't go according to plan. In fact, they blew up in a way no one could have predicted. Sources close to the matter say Freedman didn't just decline the offer, he erupted, shouted, demanded to know whether Blake Lively truly understood who she was dealing with, and that moment sparked what is now being called the most dangerous legal feud in modern celebrity history. Bryan Freedman didn't just say no, he escalated the war. For months, the legal saga between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni has dominated headlines. From mysterious subpoenas to leaked texts to Taylor Swift's name being dragged into court documents, this case has become Hollywood's nightmare. But what no one saw coming was the accusation that Blake Lively, or someone very close to her, allegedly attempted to buy silence by floating a large sum of money to one of the most feared litigators alive. And it backfired spectacularly. The legal world is reeling. The entertainment industry is panicking, and Bryan Freedman, he's not backing down. In today's Expose, we are pulling the curtain all the way back. What exactly did Blake Lively offer? Why did Freedman go ballistic? How is Justin Baldoni reacting? And is this the final straw that could destroy Blake Lively's reputation forever? And is there proof? We'll walk you through the backroom deal gone wrong, the explosive reaction from Bryan Freedman, and how this one desperate move could trigger a total collapse of Blake's legal team and possibly her career. Because if what's being alleged is true, we're not just talking about a scandal, we're talking about a legal and ethical bombshell that could change how celebrity law is done in Hollywood forever. To truly grasp the magnitude of this moment, where Bryan Freedman allegedly exploded after Blake Lively's team offered him hush money to walk away, we need to rewind the clock. This feud has been quietly simmering for over a year, and what began as a tightly controlled media narrative has unraveled into a full-blown legal nightmare with career-ending consequences on the line. It all started with Justin Baldoni, the actor, producer, and philanthropist widely respected in both industry and advocacy circles, who had maintained a squeaky clean public persona for years. But when Blake Lively, America's sweetheart turned industry power broker, publicly accused him of fostering a toxic environment during a joint project under Wayfarer Studios, the fallout was immediate and explosive. Baldoni didn't just deny the allegations, he fired back, and hard. His legal team, headed by the formidable Bryan Freedman, launched a defamation suit that alleged Blake's claims were not only false, but deliberately malicious. They claimed the accusations were a PR strategy to divert attention from another scandal brewing beneath the surface, one that allegedly involved Blake's manipulation of internal studio politics, and even sabotage of competing female-led projects to maintain her own spotlight. And then came the leaks, private messages between Blake and executives, studio insiders speaking off the record, depositions that contradicted her initial statements. The cracks in her case widened with every court filing. But Blake wasn't backing down either. Instead of retreating, she doubled down with a legal team that ballooned to 6 separate firms. She subpoenaed creators, content commentators, even YouTubers who covered the story. She painted a picture of herself as a woman under attack from a bitter ex-colleague with a vendetta. But slowly that image started to erode. Then Taylor Swift's name was dragged into the fray, not just as a character reference, but as a potential witness in a sealed filing that pointed to private texts allegedly showing Blake's true intentions behind the scenes. That's when public opinion began to turn. Suddenly Blake wasn't the victim, she was the aggressor, the strategist, the power player, possibly pulling strings behind the scenes. And in the middle of this hurricane stood Bryan Freedman. If you don't know Freedman, you haven't been paying attention. This is the guy who's gone head-to-head with some of the most powerful people in entertainment and won. Whether representing ousted executives, high-profile talents, or filing bombshell cases that shake the industry to its core, Freedman doesn't bluff. He investigates, he strikes hard, and he doesn't lose often. So when Blake's team allegedly attempted to sideline him not with legal arguments, but with cold hard cash, it was the equivalent of trying to bribe the sheriff in the middle of a public trial. It was reckless, and it was personal. Legal experts say this is far more than an ethical blunder, it may be criminal. If it can be proven that Blake's side offered payment with the intent to manipulate the legal outcome of an active case, we're talking about potential obstruction charges. Even if no money exchanged hands, the very offer itself, if documented or corroborated, could trigger sanctions, bar complaints, or even new litigation. But here's where it gets messier. Insiders suggest this isn't the first time Blake's team attempted backdoor deals. Over the past 6 months, there have been quiet murmurs in legal circles about Blake shopping settlements behind closed doors, often without going through official channels. Some say she's been desperate to avoid trial ever since the Taylor Swift texts were greenlit for discovery, because once those go public, the damage could be permanent. Baldoni's team has been preparing for this for months. Behind the scenes, they've been compiling a treasure trove of discovery material, witness statements, email threads, confidential memos, and DA letters that have now been invalidated by court order. Freedman's strategy was clear: overwhelm Blake's legal operation not just with legal firepower, but with undeniable truth. And now we're at a boiling point. This isn't just a civil suit anymore. This is a battle for reputations, careers, and legacies. If Freedman's accusations about the cash offer hold up, Blake could be facing multiple fronts: a defamation suit and a potential ethics investigation, and the worst of all, the slow but devastating erosion of her credibility in the court of public opinion. Already the media is turning. Outlets that once fawned over Blake's every red carpet appearance are now publishing damning analysis pieces styling her motives, her tactics, and her character. Has the Golden Girl lost her shine? One article asked. Is Blake's empire built on silence? Another quipped. Headlines that would have been unthinkable a year ago are now dominating Google search trends. But while Blake's star is dimming, Freedman's is burning brighter than ever. His legal acumen has earned him near mythical status in Los Angeles, but this latest chapter may become his most defining. And unlike many lawyers who shy away from public attention, Freedman has embraced the spotlight, using it as a shield, a sword, and sometimes a tactica. Trap. He's reportedly preparing a new motion to submit a sworn declaration outlining the alleged bribe attempt, complete with timestamps, witness affidavits, and possibly even audio recordings. If confirmed, it could implode Blake's case before it ever reaches a jury. And even if the court throws it at the public, already smells blood. Justin Baldoni, for his part, has remained publicly silent, likely advice from Freedman. But sources say he's both rattled and relieved. Rattled because he never expected Blake to go this far. Relieved because finally her desperation is on full display. As one insider close to the case bluntly put it, this wasn't a negotiation. This was an act of war. And Brian doesn't lose wars. To understand the gravity of Blake Lively allegedly offering Brian Freedman a secret payout to ditch Justin Baldoni's case, you first need to understand exactly who Brian Freedman is, and why he may be the worst possible person to try to buy off. If you're in Hollywood and find yourself in the middle of a scandal, there are two types of lawyers you can call. One is the PR-friendly fixer, someone who'll help you write a soft apology, pay off some settlements, and try to keep your name out of page 6. The other is Brian Freedman, and if you're up against him, you better run. Freedman has built his reputation not just as a defender of stars and executives, but as a destroyer of institutions when they cross the line. A co-founder of Freedman plus Titleman LLP, he's a litigator known for being aggressive, unapologetically sharp, and lethal with evidence. You don't hire Brian Freedman to settle, you hire him to win. And not just in court, in headlines, in contracts, in careers. In recent years, Freedman has represented some of the biggest and most controversial names in media and entertainment. From Chris Harrison, former Bachelor host, to Gabrielle Union, from talent agents to producers. wrongfully ousted from projects. Freeman has become the go-to guy when someone believes they've been smeared, defamed, fired, and justly, or in Justin Baldoni's case, set up by a well-oiled PR machine. He's also no stranger to taking on massive corporations. He's gone head-to-head with Netflix, Universal, ABC, and nearly every major agency and streaming platform in Hollywood. And like many in the legal field, he doesn't shy away from public-facing cases. In fact, he often uses media pressure as a strategic weapon. His filings are known for being aggressive, calculated, and packed with receipts. And what makes him particularly terrifying to opponents, he usually has the receipts.
So when Blake Lively's team allegedly tried to offer him a back-channel financial arrangement, essentially a bribe if proven true, it wasn't just tone deaf. It was suicidal. Because Bryan Freedman isn't the kind of guy you approach quietly. He's the guy you avoid unless you have a bulletproof defense, and even then you don't let your guard down. People in Hollywood often whisper the same thing if Bryan Freedman's involved, someone's getting exposed. He's built a career on precision strikes, finding the flaw in a plaintiff's narrative, the contradiction in an email, the misstep in a media statement. And when he hits, it's with maximum impact. He doesn't just dismantle cases. He often dismantles reputations. This makes him a strategic nightmare for celebrities like Blake Lively, whose public image is tightly curated. A single leaked deposition, a contradictory text, a damning audio clip, it's all fuel for Freedman's fire. And he knows how to wield it not just in court but in the press with surgical timing. Freedman's closest allies describe him as a walking time bomb of accountability. He doesn't bluff, doesn't panic, and never hesitates. His enemies? They call him ruthless, vengeful, even predatory. But the truth likely lies somewhere in between. He's a legal tactician who knows how Hollywood works, and more importantly, how it falls apart. What's more, Freedman is deeply loyal. Once he commits to a client, especially one he believes is being unfairly targeted, he fights like hell. Sources close to him say his commitment to Baldoni is not just professional, it's personal. He reportedly believes Baldoni is being dragged through the mud by a coordinated whisper campaign, one that uses Blake Lively's star power to make lies feel like truth. So when Blake's alleged offer came through, whether in the form of a text, a call, or through a friend of a friend, it didn't land as an olive branch. It landed as an insult. And Freedman, being Freedman, didn't just reject it. He prepared to weaponize it. If reports are accurate, he's already started gathering the evidence trail, communications, witnesses, and potentially even digital logs that place Blake's camp in direct contact with intermediaries. In typical Freedman fashion, it's believed, he didn't confront the offer immediately. He let it hang. Let the other side think it might work. And then, as always, he struck not with silence but with legal firepower. That firepower is now set to erupt in the next round of filings. And if he names names, it could blow the entire case open. To Blake Lively's team, Bryan Freedman might have seemed like a barrier they could sidestep, a lawyer who, like many in the industry, could be swayed by the promise of money, discretion, or career connections. But what they failed to understand is this: Bryan Freedman doesn't play by those rules. He burns the rulebook and rewrites it on his own terms. So, who is Bryan Freedman? He's the storm Blake Lively should have seen coming. And now that it's here, there may be no shelter left. It all began with a whisper, a rumor that Blake Lively had quietly reached out to someone close to Bryan Freedman. At first it sounded absurd. Why would a celebrity of Blake's stature risk everything on something so audacious? But then, the pieces started coming together. And once they did, the implications were undeniable. Multiple industry sources have now confirmed that representatives from Blake Lively's team allegedly made an informal offer to Bryan Freedman, or rather to his office, to step away from the Justin Baldoni case. The message was supposedly clear: disengage and there would be compensation. Generous compensation. We're talking about a rumored 7-figure offer. Not through traditional legal settlements, but a private transaction designed to fall outside the court's radar. But Freedman isn't just any lawyer. He knows how to document everything. He understands the power of leverage and, more importantly, the consequences of attempting to tamper with a legal proceeding. So rather than respond emotionally or impulsively, Freedman allowed the communication to play out. Sources claim he documented every exchange, including names, timestamps, and potential intermediaries involved. And when the time was right, when he had all the proof he needed, he called it out. Word spread quickly within the Los Angeles legal circuit: Bryan Freedman was preparing a declaration. Not just a statement, a formal notarized court document that would outline in painstaking detail how Blake's team allegedly attempted to remove him from the case by buying his silence. And if that declaration gets filed, it could become public record. That means names, methods, amounts, and more could be exposed for the world to see. So what exactly happened? Here's the timeline according to insider sources and leaked memos. In early June 2025, shortly after a damaging ruling, allowed the infamous Taylor Swift texts to enter discovery. Tensions reportedly soared behind the scenes for Blake's camp. Her attorneys knew the public release of those texts could cause irreversible harm to her image and possibly contradict earlier sworn statements. That's when, according to multiple accounts, an unofficial emissary reached out to someone affiliated with Freedman's legal team. The request was cloaked in vague language, but the meaning was unmistakable. The emissary, said to be a well-known crisis manager with ties to top talent agencies, allegedly suggested a mutual off-ramp for both sides, but especially for Freedman. He was told in essence that his involvement was inflaming the case and that certain people would be grateful if he disengaged. But that wasn't all. The message ended with a figure $2 million. No strings. A quiet agreement. Walk away from Baldoni's representation and receive the payout through what the messenger reportedly referred to as a discretionary foundation. The implication: the payment could be made in such a way that it appeared to be part of a consulting contract or charitable initiative, cloaking it under layers of legal camouflage. Freedman didn't take the bait. Instead, he quietly opened an internal investigation. Who exactly made the offer? How was it routed? Who authorized it? Was it a rogue actor within Blake's circle, or did it come with her full knowledge and consent? What he found reportedly was damning. A trail of messages, voicemails, and cross-referenced contacts allegedly tied the proposal directly to Blake Lively's inner circle, including her lead publicist, a high-profile entertainment fixer, and a controversial legal consultant she retained earlier this year after two other firms abruptly dropped her case. While Blake herself may not have picked up the phone, it's believed she was not only aware of the outreach but may have personally signed off on the offer. At least, that's what the records are alleged to show, a smoking gun that could redefine her entire legal standing in the case. Freedman, according to insiders, exploded when he realized the full scope of the maneuver. His words in a private email to Baldoni's team were reportedly as follows: they think they can buy integrity. They think they can purchase silence. But they've made one mistake too many, and now they'll learn why I don't get bought. He's now reportedly preparing a motion to submit this evidence directly to the court, not merely as a response but as part of a larger ethics violation filing that could trigger sanctions against Blake's legal representatives. If successful, the court could disqualify members of her legal team, introduce penalties, or even escalate the matter to the state bar for further investigation. More than that, this revelation has begun to fracture Blake's internal support structure. One insider close to her camp told Variety under anonymity, there are people who want off this case. People who thought they were representing a victim, and now they're realizing they might have been helping cover up a manipulation. That changes everything. Behind the scenes, damage control is in full swing. Blake's attorneys have reportedly denied the accusations and are preparing a rebuttal in case the declaration becomes public. However, there are growing fears that one of the intermediaries involved in the offer may flip, offering testimony or documents to Freedman in exchange for immunity or professional protection. And if that happens, it's game over. News of the alleged bribe has already leaked to several industry blogs and legal insiders on X, formerly Twitter, and the reactions have been brutal. Users are calling Blake's alleged move disgusting, desperate, and criminal. One viral post read, imagine trying to pay off the lawyer of the guy you falsely accused. Blake Lively is cooked. Other prominent voices have chimed in. A former Hollywood studio executive commented, if this is true, it's not just legal malpractice. It's character assassination disguised as strategy, and it won't work on someone like Freedman. Even Taylor Swift stans have begun quietly pulling back. While Taylor has never publicly supported Blake's position in this case, her silence has increasingly been interpreted as distance, especially now that the alleged bribe calls Blake's credibility into serious question. The hashtag bribery Blake trended for nearly 5 hours after the news broke, with influencers, journalists, and attorneys weighing in on the possibility of criminal referral. And perhaps most shockingly, even Hollywood attorneys who normally avoid commenting on ongoing litigation have started to break rank. One prominent entertainment litigator told The Hollywood Reporter, if what Bryan Freedman is preparing is what I think it is, a declaration with documentation of a financial coercion attempt, then this case has just flipped. Blake might be the one on trial before this is over. When Bryan Freedman realized the full extent of the alleged offer Blake Lively's camp made, the veiled bribe to get him to back off Justin Baldoni's case, he didn't just shut it down, he went to war. Those close to the attorney say Freedman's fury was immediate and total. Not just because of the insult to his professional integrity, but because the maneuver signaled how far Blake's camp was willing to go to suppress the truth. In his eyes, it wasn't just a bribe, it was a direct assault on the principles of justice, ethics, and the rule of law. And Freedman doesn't take that lightly. Within hours of confirming the source of the alleged payout proposal, Freedman began assembling a counteroffensive, and it wasn't just legal. It was reputational. This wasn't just about defending Baldoni anymore. This was about making an example out of Blake Lively's team. Multiple sources report that Freedman's internal response was fiery and immediate. He called an emergency meeting with Baldoni and his legal advisors, laying out the communications he had received, the proof of the outreach, and a strategy to respond. According to a leaked email reviewed by 2 independent legal journalists, Freedman wrote the following: "This is a perversion of justice. They're not trying to win the case. They're trying to remove the opponent. That's not legal strategy, that's intimidation cloaked in money. They came after the wrong lawyer." Insiders say Freedman described the alleged bribe as a mafia move and expressed concern that if they were willing to attempt this, they might try other methods to derail the process, including media manipulation, blackmail, or the misuse of NDAs to suppress key witnesses. In that same meeting, Freedman authorized his team to prepare a sworn declaration, a formal document detailing every aspect of the alleged offer, including names, emails, and intermediary contacts. He instructed them to prepare it for submission in the next court motion, likely in a pretrial conference. But that wasn't all. He also authorized his media strategy unit to brief select journalists, legal correspondents, not tabloids, on the situation. He wanted this known, one insider said. He didn't want to just fight this in court. He wanted the public to see how dirty it's gotten. What followed was a calculated multi-step media offensive. First came the leaks to the legal press. Law 360, The Hollywood Reporter, Deadline. Suddenly headlines began appearing: Freedman preparing declaration alleging coercion attempt by opposing team. Then came the commentary. Legal experts weighed in on air and on social media, wondering aloud if this could amount to witness tampering or even obstruction of justice. Freedman didn't stop there. He spoke, albeit indirectly, through a trusted legal analyst on MSNBC's Legal Roundtable, who quoted Freedman as saying the integrity of the court system depends on accountability. If we don't shine light on these tactics, we allow the powerful to rewrite the rules. The messaging was clear. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't stepping down. He was turning the volume up. By the end of the day, at least 6 major news outlets had confirmed the existence of a formal complaint in preparation. Freedman's team issued a rare statement to the press reading: "Any attempt, financial or otherwise, to interfere with the sanctity of legal representation will be treated with the utmost seriousness. We are in possession of communications that, once disclosed, will speak for themselves." Though Blake Lively's team issued a blanket denial, the damage had already been done. The court of public opinion, and more critically the professional legal community, had taken note. Behind the scenes, the fallout from Freedman's explosion was devastating for Blake Lively. Her legal team, already spread across multiple firms, began pointing fingers internally. According to 2 insiders, a partner from one of her legal firms expressed disapproval over how the outreach to Freedman was handled, saying that was a rogue move. It should have never happened, and now we all might pay for it. There are also whispers that at least one member of her PR and legal advisory circle has resigned quietly, fearing long-term professional repercussions if they're tied to an active effort to tamper with legal counsel. A junior associate allegedly leaked part of an internal memo expressing concern that ethical boundaries were not just crossed but trampled. As for Freedman, he's reportedly pressing forward full steam. In a move that stunned even his colleagues, he's now preparing to expand the scope of discovery to include communication between Blake's PR team, crisis managers, and outside contractors, suggesting that more attempts at manipulation may be uncovered. Sources close to the court say the judge in the Baldoni versus Lively case has been informed informally of the development and is considering an evidentiary hearing, which could include subpoenaing the individuals allegedly involved in the payment proposal. While most lawyers would choose to keep this kind of battle confined to the courtroom, Freedman has always played a broader game. He understands that in Hollywood, perception is power, and in this case, perception may be Blake's biggest vulnerability. So in tandem with his legal filings, Freedman has begun working with public transparency watchdogs, legal ethics advisors, and journalist liaisons to raise awareness of tactical coercion in high-profile celebrity litigation. It's part PR, part precedent setting, and all Freedman. As a legal consultant for NBC News put it, Bryan's not just defending Justin Baldoni. He's waging a reputational war against Blake Lively's entire machine. And every move she makes now will be scrutinized in the worst way possible. Indeed, since the bribe story broke, Blake's press team has gone into full lockdown. No new appearances, no interviews, no spontaneous paparazzi walks with her husband Ryan Reynolds. And according to insiders, even her agents are growing anxious about the effect this will have on upcoming projects and brand deals. One streaming executive told The Wrap if she's connected to a bribery scandal, even through her team, it's a poison pill for any project involving courtroom drama, female empowerment, or ethics. Which is most of what she does. As of now, Freedman's declaration has not yet been filed, but sources say that could change within days. Once submitted, it will become part of the public court record, accessible to journalists, fans, and fellow litigators alike. And if even half of what's rumored is true, it will obliterate any remaining moral high ground Blake Lively claims to stand on. Freedman meanwhile remains steadfast. He hasn't spoken publicly. He doesn't need to. The ripples he's created are already turning into shockwaves. One legal analyst summed it up perfectly: Freedman doesn't shout to be heard. He whispers just loud enough to collapse empires. And if this declaration sees the light of day, Blake Lively's empire may be the next to fall. Before the subpoenas, before the court declarations, and long before Blake Lively's alleged bribe attempt set Hollywood ablaze, there was something else: a once promising collaboration between two stars that spiraled into the most bitter legal feud the entertainment world has seen in years. Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni weren't just professional acquaintances, they were once allies with shared goals, mutual respect, and a common project that should have elevated both of them. So what happened? How did two seemingly like-minded creatives go from potential partners to sworn enemies, with explosive allegations, legal filings, and scorched-earth tactics now defining their relationship? To answer that, we need to look deeper past the glossy headlines and curated interviews into the project that started it all, the toxic breakdown behind the scenes, and how betrayal, ambition, and image collided in the worst possible way. In 2023, Justin Baldoni's Wayfarer Studios was riding a wave of credibility. Known for producing socially conscious content and uplifting underrepresented voices, Wayfarer had carved a niche that was both creative and meaningful. Blake Lively meanwhile was in the midst of rebranding herself as more than just an actress. She wanted to be a serious producer and executive, someone with power behind the camera. When Blake and Baldoni joined forces on a limited series revolving around female empowerment and social justice, the industry buzzed with excitement. It was seen as the perfect match: her star power and production influence combined with his values-driven storytelling. The project was fast-tracked and entered development with full studio backing. But as production inched closer, the cracks began to show. Several insiders involved in the project now say that Blake and Justin clashed repeatedly over creative direction, staffing, and tone. Blake allegedly wanted more celebrity-driven content, big names, glossy visuals, bold statements, as one crew member described it. Baldoni, on the other hand, was pushing for authenticity, real stories, real voices, and a tone that didn't feel like manufactured activism. The disagreement became especially tense when Blake allegedly tried to push out two writers. Baldoni had personally recruited women of color who had lived experience with the project's themes. According to leaked emails, Blake was uncomfortable with the tone and wanted to replace them with screenwriters she had worked with on a previous film. This move reportedly sparked a heated exchange. Baldoni stood his ground and refused to fire the writers. It was one of the first visible fractures in their partnership, one that would only deepen in the months to come. After that clash, sources say the relationship between Blake and Baldoni turned icy. Meetings became tense. Communications were filtered through assistants and lawyers. On set there were visible divisions: Team Blake and Team Justin, with producers caught in the crossfire. At one point, according to three separate crew members, Blake allegedly called Baldoni difficult to work with in front of a group of executives during a production meeting. The comment was said to be calculated, a subtle but sharp attempt to discredit his leadership in front of decision-makers. It wasn't loud, one person recalled, but it was deliberate, and everyone in the room felt it. Meanwhile, Baldoni began keeping detailed records of meetings, instructions, and interactions, something colleagues say he never did before this project. He allegedly began suspecting that Blake was maneuvering behind the scenes, attempting to either sideline him creatively or provoke a meltdown that could justify his removal from the series. Then came the moment that turned Cold War into active hostility: a leaked memo allegedly written by Blake or someone on her team that accused Baldoni of fostering a toxic and exclusionary work environment on the project. The memo, which was never formally submitted to HR but circulated internally at the studio, cited multiple complaints from unnamed crew members and suggested that Justin's behavior undermined efforts to create a safe, inclusive space. Baldoni was blindsided. Not only had there been no prior complaints filed, he'd received praise from many of the same staffers cited, but the vague language and anonymous sources felt in his words manufactured and malicious. In response, he issued a private memo of his own addressed to studio leadership and later leaked, in which he called the allegations a thinly veiled attempt to erase my voice from a project I helped build from the ground up. That was the breaking point. From that moment on, the gloves came off. The lawsuit ERA begins. Within weeks, Baldoni had retained Bryan Freedman, and within months the defamation suit was filed, a bold public move that shocked the industry. Actors don't usually sue each other, especially not over behind-the-scenes drama. But Baldoni's case was different. He claimed reputational damage, career harm, and deliberate interference by Blake and her team to sabotage his future in the industry. Blake in turn denied all wrongdoing and painted herself as a whistleblower, a woman calling out bad behavior in a male-dominated industry. Her defense relied on #MeTooEra language, positioning Baldoni's complaint as an attack on a woman speaking her truth. But over time her narrative began to unravel. Discovery documents, testimonies from crew members, and conflicting statements painted a far more complicated picture, one where Blake's ambition, not Baldoni's alleged behavior, was the driving force behind the implosion. Legal insiders believe the core of this feud is not about ethics abuse or creative differences, it's about control. Blake Lively, once seen as untouchable, found herself losing ground on a project she thought she could dominate. And Justin Baldoni, rather than yielding, pushed back. That power struggle created the very tension that now fuels one of the nastiest celebrity lawsuits in recent memory. Even worse, some believe Blake saw Baldoni's refusal to bow out as a threat to her larger rebrand. With multiple executive producer credits in development and several advocacy campaigns linked to her public image, the last thing she needed was a man she couldn't control, especially one who kept receipts. That's why Bryan Freedman's involvement only escalated matters. With him on the case, Blake's team knew the usual tactics wouldn't work, and that may have been what led to the now infamous alleged bribe attempt. At this point, the relationship between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni is completely beyond repair. They no longer speak. They don't acknowledge each other publicly. Any footage or promotional material tied to the original project has either been shelved or buried. And behind the scenes, every interaction is routed through a complex network of attorneys, PR handlers, and crisis consultants. But while the personal fallout is tragic, the professional consequences could be far worse, especially for Blake. With Freedman pressing forward, court deadlines looming, and now an ethics scandal threatening to erupt, her entire career strategy may be imploding. Justin Baldoni for now remains steady, publicly calm, legally aggressive, and supported by an attorney who seems hellbent on ensuring that this war ends with total accountability, no matter the cost. In any other case, Taylor Swift's name might never have come up. But this isn't just any lawsuit, and Blake Lively isn't just any celebrity. As the court battle between Blake and Justin Baldoni intensifies, one name continues to loom large over every filing, every leak, every whisper inside the courtroom: Taylor Swift. Once known for being fiercely loyal to her inner circle, Taylor's friendship with Blake has now become a double-edged sword. Once a badge of Hollywood sisterhood, it's now a potential liability, especially with rumors swirling that private texts between the two may become public evidence in one of the most high-stakes defamation cases in recent Hollywood memory. So how did Taylor Swift, America's biggest pop star, become the invisible hand shaping the trajectory of a legal firestorm? Let's rewind. Blake Lively and Taylor Swift have been publicly close since 2015. They vacationed together, attended award shows together, shared private birthday photos, cryptic Instagram captions, and even moments with Swift's inner girl squad. Blake's children were name-dropped in Swift's music. The friendship wasn't just real, it was branding. Publicly, they were a model of modern womanhood: successful, supportive, unshakably loyal. But behind that curated image, things weren't always so perfect. Multiple insiders, including a former assistant and 2 former publicists, have indicated that there were periods of quiet tension between the two. Moments where Blake's ambition clashed with Taylor's need for control. Arguments over press narratives. Alleged friction over how involved Blake could be in Taylor's private projects. Still, the friendship endured, at least in public. That's why Taylor's name being dragged into the lawsuit hit like an earthquake. It began with a discovery motion filed by Bryan Freedman, one that included a list of requested communications between Blake Lively and key individuals tied to her public statements against Baldoni. Included in that request were private text messages with Taylor Swift. At first, Blake's team fought back hard. They claimed the texts were irrelevant, personal, and protected by confidentiality. But the judge didn't agree. After reviewing preliminary evidence in camera, privately, the court ruled that a select batch of texts between Blake and Swift would be admissible and possibly pivotal. We still don't know exactly what the messages say, but insiders suggest they include references to Baldoni, the Wayfarer project, and Blake's strategy to take control of the narrative. One rumored text from Blake to Taylor reportedly read, "He's not listening. I may need to go public before he ruins what we've built." Another, even more explosive, is alleged to include this line, "You've managed it before, I just don't want to look like the villain. Help me frame this." If these texts are real and admissible, they could significantly weaken Blake's credibility. Not only would they suggest a strategic and possibly disingenuous motivation behind her public accusations against Baldoni, but they would implicate Swift even tangentially as someone Blake turned to for guidance in shaping public fallout. Even if Swift didn't respond in kind, the fact that Blake was allegedly seeking advice on manipulating public perception could destroy the moral clarity she's tried so hard to preserve. So far, Taylor Swift has made no public comment about the case. No statements. No Instagram likes. No quiet support for Blake. And that silence has become deafening. In Swift's world, silence is rarely accidental. She's known for her meticulously managed image. Every photo op, tweet and red carpet appearance is a calculated decision. So the fact that she hasn't been seen publicly with Blake in over 6 months and hasn't defended her in the wake of mounting backlash is significant. PR analysts believe this distance is strategic. With Taylor in the middle of a historic stadium tour and a massive Oscar campaign quietly underway for her all-too-well short film, she has no desire to get entangled in a legal circus, especially one involving alleged manipulation, bribes and court-ordered text releases. But behind the scenes, that's a different story. One source close to Taylor's team shared this chilling detail: there's been panic. They don't know how bad the texts are or what's going to be made public. If Blake dragged her into this without full transparency, it could become a disaster. Swifties, famously loyal and digitally relentless, have also begun to distance themselves. While the fandom once saw Blake as one of Taylor's untouchables, that shield is cracking. On platforms like Reddit and TikTok, users have started speculating about the fallout. Videos with titles like "Did Blake Lively betray Taylor?" "Swift's trust in Blake might have just ruined Taylor's PR" wall are gaining traction fast. It doesn't help that several of Swift's closest confidants, including Gigi Hadid and Selena Gomez, have been seen spending less time with Blake even as they continue supporting Taylor. Public friendship dynamics are shifting. Even Ryan Reynolds, once seen jokingly as Taylor's honorary brother-in-law, has been conspicuously quiet. And if Taylor truly feels blindsided by Blake dragging her name,